Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. Means we're brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Our Tuesday staples coming to you here shortly. Glen West, Go 24/7 senior writer, going to be with us at 1:30 talking football and maybe a little bit of basketball as well. Sharif Ishak, WDSU down in New Orleans, talking about nothing but injuries with Sharif, I would imagine, at 2:30. That's all that's going on in Pelicans land, and they're trying to get back from some of that with the Saints. Of course, we'll talk about the Saints win over Atlanta back on Sunday and look forward to the Browns coming up this week, again, from the Caesars Superdome. I've got to look at, I wouldn't call it state of the program 1 hour from right now. Just something that stood out to me today when kind of going over all aspects of LSU's program, and I'll share that with you at 2 o'clock. We'll briefly look at the college football playoff a little bit later as well because, you know, it is a sport we cover, but I don't know that LSU is going to be involved in that college football playoff, so won't be quite as riveting a conversation as has been the last couple of weeks. But we'll start on this Tuesday the same way we start every single day, and that's with our opening drive.
Time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Every car on the lot, Genesis of Baton Rouge, is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. LSU in Florida from the Swamp coming up on Saturday, and I've got great news for young Hunt Palmer. Great news. The tide has turned on Florida and LSU. Now, I grew up in the 90s. Now, I wasn't cognizant enough in the very early 90s to really understand what was going on. In fact, the game that kind of set the hook for me with LSU was the 97 Florida game. It was already there. I had been to the Independence Bowl in 95 and knew it was a big deal. I watched Warren Morris's home run in 96 and knew it was a big deal, even though I was 8. But going to Tiger Stadium in 1997 to see LSU beat Florida was the one that really crystallized everything for me. For the rest of my time as a youngster out in the front yard playing 1-on-0 football and broadcasting every game, I was LSU against Florida and Steve Spurrier. And it was all those 90s Florida stars. It was Danny Werfel. It was Jesse Palmer. It was Doug Johnson. It was Jaquez Green. It was those great players over that great run that Florida had that I was beating as Hunt Palmer, no less. But during that time, really the only time LSU was beating Florida was in my front yard. Because you look at 1988 through 2001, and Florida won 13 of 14 over that stretch, and they did so by an average of 23 points. LSU's only win was that 97 game where Florida came in number 1. 1990, 34-8. 91, 16-0. 93, 58-3. 94, 42-18. 96, 56-13. 99, 31-10. 2000, 41-9. I was in Tiger Stadium for that one. These are just blowouts. LSU was getting annihilated by Florida every year. And you're sitting here going, my goodness, this is the team that the SEC says we have to play every year because Alabama and Tennessee have to do their thing the third Saturday in October, and Auburn and Georgia have to do their thing. So everybody looked around and said, well, those are the Power 4 teams in the league. Who else is good? Well, Florida and LSU, y'all are supposed to be good. Y'all play. And, you know, Ole Miss, you can pair off with Vanderbilt. And Mississippi State, you can pair off with Kentucky. And Arkansas and South Carolina, y'all can pair off, and we'll figure all that out. But these two sacred games, Alabama, Tennessee, and Auburn, Georgia, we have to play those. So LSU, you're stuck with the juggernaut. And it sucked for 14 years. You had one win, tore the goalpost down. That one time you beat them is on newspaper clippings all over the city now. But then things started to change. Nick Saban showed up in Baton Rouge, and from 2002 to 2012, an 11-game stretch, LSU won 6-5. But it was remarkably tight, and those were classic games. Of course, everybody remembers the 2007 game here. The 2005 game here was nuts. Of course, the 2010 game down there in Gainesville was crazy. The drama in 2009 with Tebow, was he going to play? Was he not going to play? But over 10 years, 11 games, LSU won 6-5, and the total points were Florida 229 to LSU 224. For 10 years, it was lockstep between those two programs. National championships for LSU in 03 and 07. National championships for Florida in 06 and 08. It was one of the premier rivalries in the sport. And when you talk to Jacob Hester, or you talk to Marlon Favorite, or you talk to Richard Dixon, they go straight to Florida. That was the game. It's since morphed into Alabama. Prior to this, it was probably Auburn. But that was a classic rivalry. And then something crazy has happened. At least crazy when you consider what the 90s looked like. Right now, LSU owns Florida. Owns them. LSU has won 9 of 11 games in this rivalry. And when you were sitting there in your purple and gold, whether it was in Tiger Stadium for a couple of those blowouts, whether you traveled to the Swamp, or maybe you were at home just watching Spurrier run up the score on LSU. 56-13, 58-3, 41-9. You had to hope that one day you could return that favor. Not necessarily to Spurrier, even though he's still there. But how about this? 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, a 5-year run. LSU right now, over those 5 years, is averaging 45 points per game on Florida. 45 points per game. The best run Steve Spurrier ever had in terms of points per game against LSU was 1993 to 1996. He scored 58, 42, 28, 56. And you're right there on pace with that. So you've kind of returned the favor. Florida absolutely owned LSU 13 out of 14 from 88 to 01. Then you played them heads up for a year, and now the worm has turned. If you can go to the Swamp and win in this game, you would be talking about winning 10 of 12. And that's right there on par with what Florida did to you once upon a time. There was a time there, and of course that's right before LSU's golden age, where it was like, how are we ever going to beat this team? Like, it's just not even fair. We show up every October, and it's just an annihilation. And then you grew up, little brother grew up and started throwing some punches back. And now little brother's just got his foot on your neck. Big brother now. And I don't know what the future of LSU in Florida is. They obviously put that on the schedule for this year and next year. But just as quickly as Auburn fell off and Mississippi State fell off, Florida could eventually fall off. And you've heard my thoughts on this for a very, very long time since we've gotten into this era of scheduling and conference realignment. I don't need Florida in Tiger Stadium every October. If you send me Tennessee or Oklahoma, that's going to feel the same to me. I don't need Mississippi State on the schedule. If you send me South Carolina or Arkansas or Kentucky, that kind of feels the same. Now, if you took everybody off the schedule and I was playing Indiana, Northwestern, Arizona State, and Iowa, I might push back on that a little bit. That's too much. But I don't need Florida on the schedule. Some of you may. I don't need Alabama on the schedule. Some of you may. But there's no denying that it's been an amazing competition each and every year. And there's no denying that Florida owned it for a long time, and then LSU tied things up, and now LSU controls that. And it's crazy as we kind of get into Florida week without diving into their personnel right now, that you're talking about a Florida program that likely, not definitely, because they can still throw some punches here the last 3 weeks, but likely is going to have 3 consecutive losing seasons and not fire their coach. I was listening to my guy Nick Dellatore on the Stadium and Gale podcast earlier this week, and he was like, man, Ron Zook got fired for a lot less than this. And that's true. Ron Zook's record is better than Billy Napier's. But it's crazy to see, and not that, LSU's been consistently excellent this entire time. LSU was not good in 2020 or 2021. And Florida was good in 2020, and LSU went there and somehow won the game. Shout out shoe tossing. But it was fascinating for me to dive into those numbers because I was so young in the early 90s, and because going back over a 30-year sample size does leave some holes in your memory. But I just had kind of forgotten that LSU had beaten Florida 9 out of 11. I remember doing the postgame show after Jaden Daniels went nuts last year and thinking, man, 9 out of 11. But it just kind of fades into the background. Now we're back into Florida week, and it's like, I can't believe LSU owns Florida. That's a cool thing. It's feather in the cap. So I hope Jacob Hester was listening. He'll enjoy that. That's your opening drive presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge. Check them out, Airline and Piku, Genesis of Baton Rouge. When we come back, we got some sound from Saints camp yesterday. Darren, Rizzi. Is the interim bump over? Are they ready to sustain a little bit of quality energy and quality play? We'll hear from the Saints head coach coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Speaking of Genesis of Baton Rouge, another good time to tell you about Genesis of Baton Rouge. I want to tell you about the facility over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge, because I can't say that I've been in a car dealership that felt quite like that. The ambiance is phenomenal. It's peaceful. They've got great Wi-Fi, great places to sit. They've got an incredible coffee machine there. Got snacks laid out. And the vibe in there is more like a 5-star hotel than it is a car showroom. And that's by design, because Genesis prides itself on the experience that Genesis drivers get. And I tell you all the time that you don't have to come in to get your car serviced at Genesis Baton Rouge. You don't have to go to the dealership to start your journey to purchase a car. But if you do, you're going to be pleasantly surprised at that experience and at that facility. It's first class in every single way. Generally speaking, when you are in the market for a vehicle in Baton Rouge, you end up on Airline Highway. There are just a lot of dealerships there. If that's the case and you're in the market for a new car, just make one extra stop at Genesis of Baton Rouge right there at Airline and Pico. It's across from Women's Hospital. And just stop on by, chat with one of their brand ambassadors. Get behind the wheel of one of these vehicles and see how safe, how sleek, how stylish all these vehicles are at Genesis of Baton Rouge. I think you'll be surprised. You may not have put Genesis on your list previously. You need to now. Check them out at Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can start that process online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
Good weekend for the New Orleans Saints, for their interim head coach, for the players in that locker room, and I think especially for the fan base as well. Just a tough 2 months there. You lose 7 in a row. All your hopes from the first 2 weeks dash. Your head coach is gone. Feels like a reset is imminent, and there's just no positivity anywhere. So for the Saints to come out and play with energy, play with effort, and play well, and beat a good football team in the Dome, I thought was really cool on Sunday. And Darren Rizzi met with the media yesterday to kind of discuss some different aspects of that game and then moving forward. The first question that I wanted to hear from is do they feel a sense of relief after breaking a 7-game skid?
I probably got lost in the week last week, because it was kind of like it was a little bit of a fresh start in a new season almost. And so I don't think there was a whole lot of people talking about the losing streak last week more than all the changes. So I think that was a good thing. So, we talked about pressing that refresh button or restart button, whatever you want to call it. So I kind of think that everybody in the building's approach last week was like, hey, man, just want to know. But yeah, overall for the whole organization, the city, getting off the streak is a good thing. So for sure, no doubt.
It's interesting to hear that. Darren Rizzi said it. You've heard Derek Carr say that as well. Said the city deserves a winner. And look, they're 3-7. So like it's not like things are on the up and up completely. But certainly, I think that the players and the organization feel a responsibility to give some positivity into the city. They know how much the Saints mean to the city of New Orleans. And people take it hard when you lose 7 games in a row and fire the coach. So, I think that's important to note that they said that. He mentioned that nobody was really talking about the losing streak. They were more so just talking about the changes that were being made. And so the question was asked, like, are you expecting to make more changes this week?
Well, I think all the changes that we made last week were received positively. But like I said to you guys last week, I want the guys walking in here every day thinking, okay, what's next? And it might be the smallest thing. And we got to continue to do that. We got to kind of continue to keep everybody alert. I just don't want to get into that same mentality. The buy-in is huge, I think. And so are we going to throw a couple more wrinkles at them this week? Heck yeah. We're going to try to do that every week. Try to keep everybody on their toes and keep them fresh. But the main changes we made, we're not changing the locker room again. I'm not going to do that to bum the guys, but some of the schedule stuff and practices and maybe threw a couple different things into practice. Keep doing that.
And that's really the task of an interim coach, isn't it? Like you got to find a way to make sure the guys are locked in. And so like in college, when the carrot is taken away as far as a bowl game or whatever, a lot of people can start to look elsewhere and it's tough to keep guys together. In the NFL, I would suggest it may be a little bit easier with most of the roster because guys are trying to make sure that they're going to keep their jobs. Like, truth be told, Cam Jordan doesn't need any more money or a new contract. Same goes for Alvin Kamara at this point. Like he doesn't need any more money or a new contract. He's taken care of there. Tyron doesn't need any more money or a new contract. Like so, those guys don't have a ton to play for from that respect. But a lot of the younger players, a lot of guys that are stepping in for injury, like they're trying to put great tape out there so that they can be on a team next year, whether it's the Saints or somebody else. So I don't necessarily worry too much about the effort from that perspective, but you do need guys to be locked in, and I think that starts with the players. Darren Rizzi can change the locker room all he wants, and he can change some of the things that they do day to day, practice schedule, all that kind of stuff. But the players don't take responsibility for it, and I don't know that it necessarily matters a lot. And Rizzi said he saw that last week, and he thinks that great things happen when players take hold of the locker room.
When the players take ownership of the locker room and the players kind of take ownership of the team, great things can happen. Anything can happen. The sky's the limit. And so when you got guys like Honey Badger and DeMario and Cam and AK and Derek and some of these veteran players that are able to look at their performance and say, man, I could do better. I could perform better. I could do this better. There's things I need to work on, and it's great, And so he's obviously got a lot of respect in that locker room. So when he's able to stand up in front of everybody, people listen. People listen to what he has to say. And so when you have a guy like that being the example, I'd step out of the way.
That's where it's a positive to have an old team. When you've got an old team, you've got guys that can steer the locker room the right way. The bad thing about having an old team is that the players get old. And we know that Cam Jordan is currently fighting Father Time for every single second he possibly can. And we know that Father Time is eventually going to win that battle. He's undefeated. But Cam Jordan was more noticeable on Sunday. He did get back there for his first sack of the year. He did do a pretty good job in terms of run defense. He's fallen off over the last 2 years, and that's obvious to anybody that's watching. However, it was nice to see Cam Jordan against the Atlanta Falcons, a team that he's plagued over the years, to step up and have his best game in 2 months this season as a Saint. And Darren Rizzi said, and they asked, is there going to be more Cam Jordan moving forward?
There was a conscious decision to get him more involved. Every game plan is going to play out a little bit different. With the D-line rotation, depends on kind of who you're playing, their personnel. I think to get yesterday's game was very conducive to Cam. I think he executed very well. Quite frankly, I think probably Cam, if you talk to the defensive coaches, and from what I saw from watching the film, Cam probably had his best performance this year. And it's not only he made a couple splash plays, just the whole 40 plays that he played were good. But yeah, I mean, listen, that may fluctuate week to week. Probably want to definitely get him more than 10 like he had the week before, and somewhere 40 might be his max there. But so he kind of maxed him out yesterday. But no, listen, all good. I thought he played very well.
Look, you got Carl Granderson, you got Chase Young. Those guys are better players than Cam Jordan at this point. They're better pass rushers. They're even better against the run. They're just better players. And those guys were showing up on Sunday too. I mean, huge play by Chase Young to come off the edge, bend the edge, and get that strip sack. And so those two guys are going to play more, but they liked what they saw in the matchup against Cam Jordan, and so they wanted to get him out there. I think that's probably not going to be as prevalent in this game coming up against Cleveland, because I think you want to send some pass rushers at Jameis Winston to force mistakes. Maybe you don't get those quite as often from Kirk Cousins, so you want to make sure that you stop the run and you get Cam out there for that. But I think it was good to see Cam Jordan kind of break out and have a great game in this season that's been so frustrating for a lot of players, but him very much included. Doesn't mean you're going to see him every week for 40, 45 snaps, but I think there's still a spot for him because of the leader that he is, and you're trying to make sure that you keep everybody moving in the right direction. The last one here, Pete Werner dealing with a little bit of a hand injury. Darren Rizzi updated that.
He's dealing with a little bit of a hand deal. They're doing some tests on that, see what's going on. So we'll kind of see what the results are. But that's why he came out of the game.
Feels like, and I cross all the fingers. Feels like that doesn't sound quite as bad as what we've been hearing. Who knows? Maybe they go to check it out and it is bad. We'll see. But Pete Werner's the guy they need in the middle of that defense. He's part of the youth of the defense, and there's not a lot of youth on this Saints defense. So having him move on, even though you do have Willie Gay and Damari Davis is still there, just would rather keep Pete Werner around. He's a guy that I think you can begin to build around. Not that he's a centerpiece of an elite defense, but he is a capable NFL player, and so hopefully he's doing okay with that hand injury down in New Orleans. Sharif Ishaq's going to jump aboard with us coming up in an hour to talk about the Saints a little bit more. Also talk about the Pelicans' ridiculous injuries. But the question for the Saints today was last week just one of those kind of short-term adrenaline shots, or did you kind of get rid of some of the negativity that was in the building, getting a little bit healthier? Maybe you can play well down the stretch. And I'm not going to sit here today and harp on the fact that you definitely need the Saints to keep losing. That's not a time and place for today. I thought it was cool on Sunday that they got a win. I think they got another home game coming up against a mediocre team here in Cleveland. Got an opportunity to win another game. We'll see if the Saints can do that. But we'll always have your Saints coverage on YouTube at Hunt on Saints. Subscribe to the channel. Get your Saints information and news every single day right there on your homepage if you subscribe to Hunt on Saints. Still plenty to do here in this Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Zion Williamson going to be out a month. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Want to look at LSU's program from a big picture perspective, and there's one problem that I've really identified that I haven't heard anybody else really talk about very much, so we'll talk about that at 2 o'clock. Brief look at the college football playoff is coming up. Sharif Ishaq from WDSU, so lots and lots to get to. You're listening to a Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio, video, security solutions, avssla.com. Nothing's more important than the safety, security of your family and your home. At the Palmer home, we trust audio, video, security solutions to get that done for us. Mitchell Fisher came over to the house. We gave him our budget, told him what we were looking for. Immediately, he knew what to do. They went back to their shop, came back 2 days later, installed the cameras near our front doors, installed the burglar alarm, got the sensors all over the house. We've got the app where we can disarm or remotely arm the burglar alarm. We can also look at our front door, back door, front yard, back door 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can pause. We can zoom in. The picture's crystal clear. We don't pay any storage fees at all. It's been a fantastic process for us. Audio Video Security Solutions was first class in their installation, first class in the customer service that followed as well. So give Mitchell Fisher and his team a call, 225-439-7920. You can find them online at avssla.com. It's Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
Let's head out to the Jim's Fire and Sightlines where we find our guy Glen West, senior editor, Go 24/7. All your football coverage, basketball coverage, baseball coverage, recruiting coverage as well. Glen's got you at Go 24/7. He's also with us every single Tuesday. Glen, how we doing?
Doing okay, Hunt. Just trying to figure out what we're going to do for the next 3 weeks. But how about yourself? Where are we at?
I'm close to that, but I guess we'll just figure it out in Gainesville. What was your biggest takeaway from Saturday?
Yeah, look, I think probably for me, just it's an affirmation, a confirmation that this program's just not where it needs to be yet. They just got completely outplayed, outcoached on both sides of the ball. We talked about a number of key factors coming into this game. I'm pretty sure every media guy, every fan had the same kind of blueprint game plan to slowing down Alabama, and it started with Jalen Milroe and slowing him down with his legs. Unfortunately, he runs for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns. Offensively, you were hoping they could eliminate some of the turnovers and find some kind of balance between the run and the pass, and they turned the ball over 3 times. And outside of one Caden Durham 45-yard run, they pretty much got shut out on the ground too. So just really a complete no-show from LSU and one of the higher stakes games of the entire Brian Kelly era. I would say it's probably the most disappointing loss in the last 3 years. And I think you can kind of make the argument for the first time here that this program's kind of plateaued a little bit. I think there were reasons to believe that they were on the ascent the first 2 years of the program, but a third straight 9-3 season at best is kind of what you're staring at right now in the regular season. And I think you can certainly make that argument and probably make a pretty good one that they haven't improved this year in the way that I think a lot of people expected coming into the year, and certainly the way that these players and coaches talked about this offseason.
What's the biggest reason for that?
Yeah, I think they're probably playing a little bit behind the 8 ball with the defense and kind of the misfires there with the staff the first couple of years. I think they have the right coaches in on that side of the ball. I think they just have to get the personnel caught up with where the coaching staff is. I think that's a huge reason for kind of the letdown. And then, look, offensively, I thought that they've showed some signs this season that they can be a consistent offense. But I think we also maybe, I don't want to say downplayed it, but I just, the style of play was going to be completely different this year. And I don't know that we saw this kind of enigma from where they were last year to this year in terms of drop off, especially over the last 6 quarters. Look, I think you can look at the last 6 quarters and say, like, this is the absolute minimum or the absolute bottom of the pail for this offense. But it's been a rough 6 quarters, and like there's just so many deficiencies right now that it's hard to see them improving in those areas over the next 3 weeks in the way that they probably are hoping. But there's a lot of work to do, a lot of self-evaluation. I think that'll take place once these next 3 games are over. But yeah, I think that they're probably playing a little bit of catch up right now on defense, and offensively they're trying to figure out exactly what the best way to win with this group is. And it's taken them, 10 or 11 weeks, and we still kind of are not really seeing the results there.
What do you make of Garrett Nussmeier's interceptions?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a little bit of your piece. It was a great piece earlier this week, kind of breaking down all the 11 interceptions. I'm not totally going to disagree with anything that you kind of wrote there and broke down. Some of them are misreads. Some of them, I think, are him trying to make too much of a play. Too many. Trying to put too much on himself and make a play when maybe something's not there. Other times, look, I think the last couple of games, what I've noticed is the receivers are having a tough time getting separation. Like, he's having to throw these balls into extremely tight windows, and I'm just not sure that we expected that this year from this receiver core. And when you balance that out with the fact that the run game has had a real tough time, getting involved, I think really the only reliable guy you could say in that Alabama game for Nussmeier was Mason Taylor. And outside of that, it was tough sledding. And I think a lot of the interceptions that he's had, sure, he's going to own up to them, and they're absolutely on him. But I also think it's on the offense as a whole to kind of help him out a little bit more. I don't think Brian Kelly is feeding a line that's not valid there when he says that they have to help him out a little bit more than they have. And unfortunately, it's been a little bit too inconsistent over the last month or so to really kind of get the best out of Garrett, I think, in his first year as a starter.
How do you feel about the play calling?
It's hit and miss for sure. I mean, look, I thought that they had some nice, misdirection calls in the first half with the run game, and especially against Alabama. They had Xavier Thomas. They had a direct snap to Jawan Johnson. I liked that. They had a couple outside zone calls. I mean, the Caden Durham 45-yard run was an outside zone rush where they ran right behind Will Campbell, and they opened up a nice hole for him, and he was able to exploit it. But there's just so much, I guess, inefficiency and kind of what they're doing outside of those plays that it's just kind of hard to make up for some of what they do right. And so, Joe Sloan's a first-year play caller in this offense. I think that they have a lot of faith in him and that he's going to be kind of the guy going forward. But certainly some learning experiences going on with him as well. And so you've got a first-year play caller, you've got a first-year quarterback, and there's been some growing pains, I think, this season. So I'll be very interested to see kind of what they assess and evaluate going into the offseason and how they can kind of work together a little bit better going forward.
When you look at the defense, they're playing a ton of veterans. Are you a little surprised, a little disappointed, not surprised at all that some of those young players haven't pushed their way to the field a little more quickly?
I mean, it's so hard to say because I do think that they have mixed those guys in. It's maybe just not as a consistent like rotation guys, but they are getting snaps. I look out there and I see PJ Woodland playing every once in a while. I'll see Gabriel Relaford. I'll see Ahmad Bro. Deshaun Spears had a pretty significant role in the non-conference play. I do think that you got to ask those questions here over the last 3 weeks. Is do you kind of get those guys more involved, considering that those are the future foundation pieces that you're going to be building around. I don't know that they're going to go that far just because these veterans, are playing for their NFL futures here. And I know the number one goal is to put the team out there that's going to help them win the most. And right now, I think the coaching staff still believes that the veterans are the ones that can help them win these next 3 games. So until they prove otherwise, or until these young guys maybe kind of step up and make it, an irrefutable kind of proposition to put them in there a little bit more, I think they're going to continue to ride with these veteran players.
Go to the Swamp on Saturday to play Florida. Let's just say for the sake of this discussion that DJ Lagway does play in the game. If he doesn't, I think we all have a pretty good feeling of how that looks. If he does play, what do you think about LSU's matchup with Florida?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so hard because the last 6 quarters have just been so seared into our brains about what this team has looked like here recently. I mean, look, I think if Lagway plays, I don't know that he'll be 100%. And so I do think that maybe he won't be trying to move as much in the pocket and escape and try to run with his legs a little bit more. I think you can force him into some throws defensively. And look, I think in the secondary, like Ashton Stamps and Zy Alexander, I thought those guys, they held up well in Alabama just because they weren't really needed, because Alabama didn't really lean into them as part of the game plan. The part one was slowing down Jalen Milroe, and they didn't even get to part two, which is slowing down the passing game. But I do think that, Lagway's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of athletic ability, but he's going to be coming off a pretty serious hamstring strain, and I just don't know that he's going to want to test it all that much with his legs. So you make him a passer. You hope that this is a game where the secondary can really shine, and maybe you get some pressure up front on him and make him force a couple bad throws. But this is the Swamp. This is never an easy place to play. And, LSU certainly, has had Florida's number in recent years, but the way that they've looked here the last couple of weeks, I don't think you can go in with any kind of confidence that this is going to be an easy win or one that they can walk out with, a confident kind of mindset.
6-3 right now. What does your gut tell you they finish?
I think they can win all 3 of these next games. I think they probably slip up one more time just by the way that they've looked so far. I think I'm looking at 8-4. My 9-3 prediction was, I think predicated on them splitting the Alabama Ole Miss 1-2, kind of that home stand. And I actually had Florida as one of my preseason losses, but I think that there's just so much inconsistencies right now. And until they can show us here, if they can string together a couple of really complete performances, then I think you can kind of start to change the tune. But the way they've looked the last 2 games, in particular the last 6 quarters, I think, the most reasonable people would think that, that there's absolutely the opportunity for them to lose another game here down the stretch.
Glen West, senior writer, Go 24/7, is our guest here on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. All right, let's switch over to basketball here briefly. Seen him play a couple of games now. I saw one back on Sunday. Not a good first half, not a good 30 minutes, but they got it done in the last 10 minutes. Anything stand out to you for the first two games?
Yeah, they've done a nice job, I think, overall. Look, the first, like you mentioned, the first 30 minutes of that game over the weekend were not great, but I thought that they did some good things down the stretch. They, kind of were able to attack the paint, get to the rim. Jordan Sears finally got going a little bit there in the second half. They've done a pretty good job, I think, of getting open shots. I think probably the thing for me is going to be just how can they continue to evolve in the half court? I mean, the half court offense was not great in the first, 35 minutes of that game. They finally were able to lean into Jordan Sears, but it was a lot of one-on-one stuff there. Like there was not a whole ton of actions there. They were putting them in ball screens and having them just drive downhill. I do think they're going to need to continue to lean into their half court offense and develop in that way. Defensively, I think that they've shown some really good things. And then, the perimeter defense has also kind of lapsed in terms of them allowing these guards for Alabama State in particular to get to the rim. I mean, that was kind of my biggest takeaway in the first half, was that they just allowed so much dribble penetration that it was sick almost. And I think that was one of McMahon's biggest takeaways after the game. So, they're still learning here. I think they missed Tyrell Ward. Like, I think that's going to be a storyline all season to follow, is what their 3-point shooting looks like. But overall, I like what I've seen from the first two games, and if they can just kind of hone in on the half court offense and lock up a little bit more defensively on the perimeter and not allow those guards to get to the rim with such ease, then I think that they can have a pretty successful non-conference schedule.
We'll see. They'll be in Manhattan, Kansas coming up on Thursday to take on the Kansas State Wildcats. All right, Glenn, we appreciate the time, man.
All right. Thanks, Hunt. Appreciate it.
Glen West, senior writer at Go 24/7. All your LSU team coverage and recruiting, they got you covered at Go 24/7. Come back and close out hour number one with just some depressing stuff. It's just depressing stuff.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Insurance is never a super fun discussion to have, but it can be vitally important. If you own a business, you operate a business, you know how to handle your business, but what about your insurance policies? If your only interaction with your insurance broker is you get a couple of quotes for renewal every year and you pick the one with the less premium, that's one way to do it, but I would advise trusting your broker and making sure that you are covered. It's not a magic bullet. Highland Insurance Group is not a magic bullet. They're not just going to show up and slash 14% off that premium immediately. The market's not going to allow for that. But what they can do is work with you, understand your business, how you operate, what your risks are, and then mitigate them the best way they can with these policies and your deductibles and whatever the case may be. If you don't know what EPL insurance is or cyber insurance is, or D&O insurance is, call your broker. They don't know, which they should. Call the Highland Insurance Group. HighlandIG.com is that website. Jonathan Carver and his team, happy to help you with property and casualty. They can also help you with group and employee benefits. It's Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com, HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
Tuesday show is brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar. 2 locations in Baton Rouge, Nicholson just south of campus, Bluebonnet in front of the Mall of Louisiana. I will be at the Nicholson location tonight. Sports trivia, 8:30. Watching football, watching basketball. You can win some gift cards. Come on out and see us at Plucker's tonight, 8:30 for sports trivia. We got 5 rounds live action trivia. $15 for first place in every round. Second place, $5 in every round. 10 Pluckers dollars for the best team name in the night. So we always have a good time Tuesdays at Pluckers. Get on by and see us. Nicholson location, right there, just south of LSU's campus. So the New Orleans Saints, you know this story, but I'll lay it back out for you. Eric McCoy got hurt. And then Cesar Ruiz got hurt, and then Lucas Patrick got hurt, and Derek Carr got hurt, and Taysom Hill got hurt, and Chris Olave got hurt, and Rashid Shaheed got hurt, and basically the entire starting offense, save a couple of guys, your 2 tackles, Kamara, even though his ribs were broken, basically everyone was hurt. And on the defensive side of the ball, Well, Colin Saunders got hurt. Pete Werner got hurt. Demario Davis missed a game for the first time in his career, basically. Marshawn Lattimore got hurt. Paulson Adebo got hurt. Tyrann Mathieu missed some time. Like, basically, the entire defense got hurt. That's all the offense and all the defense. And you thought, well, it can't possibly go worse than that for anyone ever. And then, what is that? I could probably hit it with a gap wedge. I'm thinking 100 yards away. Things got worse in the Smoothie King Center. The Pelicans said, hold my hand grenade. Hold my hurricane. Watch this. Zion, out. Before that, you'd lost Trey Murphy. DeJounte Murray, out. Herb Jones, out. Today it was announced that Jose Alvarado is out for a month. And none of these injuries are like, oh yeah, well, he fell on his hip wrong. It kind of hurts. He'll probably be back Friday. All these injuries are, 4 to 6 weeks. I have not seen 2 outbreaks like this ever. And it happened over the matter of 6 weeks in one city to 2 franchises. I cannot believe that your top 7 options, save BI, have all gotten hurt. Like, that is impossible.
It is. And thankfully, Trey Murphy came back last night, even though they lost to the Nets. But yeah, it's still, CJ is going to be out for at least another week or two. Herb
Usually
out
it's
for
like,
another week or two.
he jammed a finger.
They'll be
can't
back
shoot.
after a week.
Yeah, give him 2 games.
Jose's
these
out
are
6
all
weeks.
These are all maybe January. It's like, jeez, and it's just, it's so early. It's so deflating. It's such a gut punch. And I had this take, and it wasn't meant to be a hot take, but when you feel something, you feel something. And I've basically gotten beat to the punch by everybody on it. Twitter, T-Bob this morning, basically everyone has said the same thing. I'm ready to put an end to the chapter of the BI Zion Pels. I think it's over. I think they're not going to accomplish anything of note with those 2 guys as the centerpiece. And the sad part is they tried to make a change by letting Valanciunas walk and then adding DeJounte Murray, and then making that a different lineup iteration and doing things a little bit differently. But you're going to put yourself so far behind the 8 ball with all these injuries that you're not going to be able to dig yourself out of it, because the Pels weren't good enough, we don't think, whole to fall into this massive ditch in the middle of November and then steadily spring their way out of it in a tough Western Conference. You're just not good enough to do that by most people's estimation. And I just think, and again, I want to be clear, I don't think it's necessarily completely Zion's fault that he gets hurt 3 times every year. And it's certainly not David Griffin or Willie Green's fault that all these guys got hurt in a 12-day period. That's just nobody's fault, but it just happened. And when it happens every single year, it's very difficult to ignore it. And I hate the term injury prone. I hate that moniker that we throw on people because they just don't know what you're supposed to do about the fact that you broke your wrist or you tore your ACL. If you have the same injury every time, well, that's just a defect, or you play a certain way and you can't survive it. But it's just unlucky, in my opinion. And I believe the Pelicans are unlucky. They've made mistakes, sure. But nothing that David Griffin and his team have done with this franchise, with this organization, by my estimation, has just been egregiously negligent or nonsensical.
I agree with that.
But it just didn't work. And it's probably going to cost people their jobs because it just didn't work. And when things don't work in sports, especially the NBA, changes are made quickly. Turnover at head coach, turnover at general manager happens everywhere all the time. We've seen teams that felt like they were at the top of the sport turning over coaches. It just happens. And I don't know if Willie Green's a great coach, a mediocre coach, an average coach, a terrible coach. I'm not really sure. I know that they've been pretty good his time there, and they've been really hurt. And this is no different. And now they're not even good because they can't put a team out there, and you're going to put yourself too far behind the 8 ball. And I just think that there are going to be sweeping changes made to this organization soon. That's the way it feels to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're 3-8 now, and they've got a tough schedule ahead. They got to go to Oklahoma City. They got Denver at home. They got the Lakers at home. They got to go to Dallas.
All of a sudden, if you look up and you're 5-20, like you can't. There's nothing you can do
about that. No,
it's just over.
Not. Yeah. I don't know if it gets that bad, but it probably doesn't. It probably doesn't. But even if you're 8-15 or 8-16, that's not going to be easy to get out of, because the schedule just isn't going to get that much easier, because the West is pretty solid across the board. I mean, there's not really many bad teams in the West. I mean, the Pelicans, you would call them a bad team now. They're not at full strength. But other than that, I mean, the Spurs obviously are going to should be taking a step forward. The Mavericks were in the finals last year. And then you've got all these other teams that are just really solid. Of course, the Thunder. So, like, it's not going to get really that much easier. Even when you get back to full strength, you've got to win a lot of games. And if you could stay healthy again. I mean, we all should expect Brandon Ingram to get hurt at some point this year and miss games. He has every single season.
And look, most NBA players at some point in an 82-game schedule have bumps and bruises and miss some time.
Yeah.
You just can't recover from your top 6 of your top 7 out for a month.
Right.
That just doesn't work. That math doesn't math. You miss 4 guys from an NFL roster, like, you need to figure that out. You miss 6 or 7 from an NBA roster where you only count on 9 guys, that ain't going to work. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how good your coach is, how good you've drafted, what the G League status looks like. It's just not going to work. And it's shocking to me that that happened on the same street, just 2 different franchises in the same city over the course of 2 weeks. I mean, not like, it would be one thing if Derek Carr and Zion got hurt. Like, oh, that's a bummer. This is 20-something guys. It's like 7 on defense, 7 on offense for the Saints, maybe 8, and then 4 more on defense. That's 12, and then 6 or 7. You're talking about 20 guys. 20 guys that have gone out for significant time between the Saints and Pels. Tough stuff. It bums me out. It's so early in both these seasons, and the air just comes completely out of the balloon, but kind of is what it is. So we'll look to Matt McMahon and Kim Mulkey to carry the torch around here for a little bit. That's it for hour number 1 here on a Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar. When we come back after Sports Center, I'm going to go into what I think to be a significant problem in this LSU football program. And I don't know if it's going to remedy itself, but I diagnosed it this morning. We'll talk about that after Sports Center. That's next on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. I tell you all the time, if you want to do a full-scale bathroom renovation or remodel, David Duvall and his team can do it from start to finish, the whole thing. And that can be time-intensive. Absolutely, it can. They don't have to do huge, major projects, though. If you've got a bathtub that you don't use, you stand in it to shower, and it's kind of dingy, and it's been there for a while, and it's not really that functional, take it out. Tub to shower conversion. Take that tub out, put in a gorgeous glass walk-in shower, and it changes the functionality of your bathroom, changes the aesthetic of your bathroom, adds value to your home. It's a win-win-win. David Duvall and his team do that kind of stuff all the time. Check out the pictures of their great work at OneBathAndClosets.com. You can also check them out on Instagram as well. Start that process with a free consultation with David Duvall and his team. It's One Bath and Closets. You can find them online, OneBathAndClosets.com.